Hello, friends. Hi. I really didn't think that this is a pit that I was going to fall into, and I walked into it willingly, but it was still a shock. So I'm here today to talk about a series that I'm in the middle of. I've only read half of it. I've read 4 of the 8 volumes, but it has taken over my brain, and it is definitely going to be on my favorite books of 2025 list, even though I can't really say that they're well written, but I don't know if that's because of how it was translated, or some other reason. I was talking to my therapist the other day, and we were going on and on about reading and books, and I was telling them how I really want to read more books in translation for 2025. And really, the point of this is just that I want to read books from other languages and other parts of the world because I should learn more, I should learn more about other cultures. And while we were talking about it, they were like, oh my God, I've been reading this series and it's translated from Chinese and I don't know if you'd like it, but you should read it. And I was like, okay, what is it? And they were like, well, it's been turned into an anime and it's gay and it's called Heaven Official's Blessing. And I was like, okay, I don't really do anime. I've never really liked anime that much, but I'll look into it and see what happens. I've fallen and I can't get up. This isn't all of them, obviously. I only have volumes 4 through 7 right now, because that's what I wanted to pay for at the moment. I've only read volumes 1 through 4, but the brain rot is terminal, guys. It's terminal. Before we go any further, I do want to say, obviously this is a Chinese series, and so the characters' names are in Chinese. The culture in the series is Chinese. The author's name is Chinese, etc., etc. I am doing my best. I am simply a girl who can only speak English, and I don't know how to pronounce Chinese. Chinese is all about pronunciation in general. So I want to apologize on behalf of anybody who actually does speak Chinese, because I understand right away already that I am going to butcher everything that I say. I'm doing my best. I really have been I don't want to say I've been studying it because I'm not studying it, but I have been trying to listen really intently when I'm watching the Donghua, and I have Google Translate up on my phone and I keep trying to remember everybody's names. And I feel like a crazy person because half the time when I'm walking around my house these days, I'm just saying Chinese names under my breath so I don't forget them. But it's hard. I gotta be honest. It's hard. Apologies. I'm gonna try, but it's not gonna sound good. Tian Guan Sifu, Heaven Official's Blessing. This series is crazy. It was originally a serialized web series. So written words, and it eventually got picked up and then translated. And so it's been translated into a lot of languages. It's a very well-selling series. And eventually after a while, I think in the early 2020s, a couple years ago, it was adapted into a Chinese animation series. Those are called Donghua, the more you know. And so far it has been running for 2 seasons. Unclear if there's going to be a 3rd season. I think they were thinking about making a short film at some point. That's all I have. But I have watched the Donghua on Crunchyroll, and it is really good. What is it about? Heaven Official's Blessing is about this crown prince, and he ascends into heaven when he's 17. And at that time, he is beloved by many. Everybody thinks he's great. He is worshipped by many, many people. He has 8,000 temples at some point. And so he becomes a god, and he is just the best. However, because of who he is as a person and because of the way that things turn out, he descends from heaven more than once. So at the start of the first volume, at the beginning of the story, this is his 3rd time ascending into heaven. And when he ascends into heaven this 3rd time, everybody is so sick of this guy. They just think he's a loser. He is a god of misfortune now. Nobody is worshiping him. Nobody knows who he is. And so they're shocked, annoyed, angry that he is back in heaven causing problems. And he's quite literally just trying to do his best. His name is Shi Lian. He is the sweetest cinnamon roll of all time. And I am obsessed with him. I'm obsessed with him. He is just the best. Mainly because his whole thesis, kind of the thesis actually of the whole series, is you should be doing good and you should be focused more on helping people rather than following the rules. And so it's a really interesting idea, especially when you think of it in conjunction with religion. And I think this fits it fits modern times very, very well, especially because modern day Christians, like, sometimes are so intent on in following Christ, in following the rules, that they forget that they should be caring about other people. And that's like literally just like the crux of Shilian. He becomes a god, obviously, and he is very cognizant of how heaven works and what you're supposed to be doing, etc. But because he's been around for like 800 years, actually, even when he was 17, he very much was just like, I don't understand why we're doing this when like it's not helping people, when we could be helping people, you know, like why am I not allowed to show myself to the mortals, even though I'm a god, when like it would be helpful to them if I did that, you know? And so he is just like breaking down boundaries and barriers and being nice to people, and he essentially gets punished for it. Not like legitimately, but he gets all this misfortune and bad luck as a result of trying to help people. And so it's really upsetting and annoying, and he is very over it. When we meet him at the beginning of volume 1, he kind of has reached a point after 800 years of just being like, well, that's just how it is. I have no fortune and it's fine. At the beginning of our story, he is setting out on quests and essentially like trying to help people and gain favor in heaven. And one of the first quests, actually the first quest he goes on after he ascends for the 3rd time, he is dealing with this vengeful ghost who is essentially taking brides from their bride procession and killing them. And so he's trying to figure out who this ghost is, what do they want, why are they taking all these brides? And in order to figure out what's going on, Shilian cross-dresses and dresses up as a bride to go undercover. While he is doing that, he ends up meeting somebody, and long story short, they fall in love. This is technically a danmei, and if you don't know, danmei is a Chinese fiction genre. Specifically, it's just like gay male romance stories. It is a love story. It is a love story. It's kind of a slow burn, though. It's actually slow burn in a lot of different ways. They meet in the first volume. Spoiler alert, they've known each other for a long time. They just maybe didn't realize it when they first met at the beginning of the first volume. I'm still in the middle, obviously, so I don't want to spoil anything for myself or for you. But the person that he meets is this ghost king named Huacheng. And Huacheng is an all-powerful supreme, and so he is hated in heaven. He has done a lot of things that the heavenly officials do not like him for. And so whenever he brings it up and he's like, do you guys know who this Huacheng guy is? Everybody in heaven is like, you gotta stay away from that guy. He is evil. He is bad news. Do not talk to him. And Shilian's whole thing is just like, but he was nice to me. Those are our two main characters, Shilian and Huacheng. And we, over the course of the first 4 volumes, I should say, we do kind of get to learn how Shilian ascended in the first place. I still haven't really figured out what happened with his second ascension, but obviously he's been around for like 800 years, so there are many, many stories that could be told in the flashbacks. But for the most part, we are following Shilian as he is trying to gain favor in heaven. And that's not even really his primary goal, obviously. He is there to help people and to save the mortal world. I don't know if I can actually recommend this. I think you kind of have to suspend a little bit of disbelief. Not necessarily because of the world building or the characters or anything like that, because all of that is incredibly strong. But I think when it comes to the writing style, especially because it's translated, you kind of have to accept it for what it is to get the content. I don't know where the fault lies, if it's the translation, if it is the original text, if it's a combination of both. The first volume was very jarring for me. When I picked it up, I don't know what I was expecting, but it's kind of wacky, it's kind of goofy. Part of that is because of the genre, I think, because it does read like an anime. I was shocked at how well it translated into an anime, but it's wacky. The prose is arguably bad, and some of the dialogue is also bad. But I think if you just like commit to the bit, and you focus more on like the characters and the relationships and the world building itself, and even the plot, I think the plot is kind of crazy too. By volume 4, I kind of have stopped noticing like the wackiness of the writing, and I think it's endearing. I think it's really, really fun. It's just so good. This has an adaptation. There are only 2 seasons out on Crunchyroll. I think the last season came out in 23 or 24. I don't know if they're making more. I would love to watch season 3 for a lot of reasons, but I'm not sure that that's on the cards. That said, I think the anime is, the donghua. I think the donghua is really, really good. Like I said, I've never really been an anime girly. I'm sure there is some internalized racism in there, but mostly like the anime that I've seen is either Studio Ghibli, which I don't even know if that counts as anime, but it's good. I like Studio Ghibli, but the only other anime content I've seen is Demon Slayer, and I've only watched a couple episodes of Demon Slayer, and it wasn't bad. Like it was fine for what it was, but you know, I think some people get into anime and it's like their whole thing, and I just like haven't found my thing. Now I found my thing. I get it now. I understand. It's so fun. It's so fun. A lot of it does kind of remind me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I know they're almost nothing alike. But some of the like comedy that plays out in Heaven Official's Blessing on screen definitely reminds me of Avatar. I think that's the thing that I really got from it is like, is it like a super intellectual series? No. Do I feel smarter having read it? Not necessarily. Am I learning a lot about Chinese culture? Yeah. There's like so many things. I think the thing that's really interesting is like there are occasional footnotes throughout the story, and it's at the most random times too, but there are a lot of like idioms and references that pop up that have a footnote that's like, this is a thing in Chinese culture, and you're like, oh my god, that's crazy. And obviously, like, since all of the names are in Chinese, I have spent a lot of time like reading up on Chinese pronunciation and trying to understand how to say X's and Q's. Just so you know, an X is kind of like a sh, and I think Q is more of a ch. Chinese pronunciation 101 with Jenna. All of that to say, I think it's been a great learning experience. So like I am smarter culturally, but like intellectually, I feel like I'm losing brain cells because it's kind of the silliest story that I've ever read. But it's also just like really, really sweet and cute. And I love that like the whole core of the story is about kindness. It's a lot about like prejudice and how people are misunderstood just based on like how they look or their circumstances. Like a lot of people misunderstand Hua Cheng because he's like this big evil ghost king, and Xi Lian spends his whole time being like, guys, he's really not doing anything bad. You need to calm down. I've fallen down the rabbit hole and I cannot get up. And I did briefly want to touch on a couple of spoilers because if I don't talk about it, I will lose my mind. But I just wanted to tell you that you should read it or don't. I don't know. I don't know if you'll like it, but I'm having a great time. If you need an introduction to some kind of Asian queer animation vibes, this is it. So as I said, I've only read half of the series so far. I have no idea what will happen in the second half. I am optimistic that we will get a lot of Hualien content, but until then, my favorite so far is volume 4. I think 4 and then 2 and then 1 and then 3 because of reasons. Volume 4 I read almost in a day yesterday, and it's it's a trip. So most of this book is the Blackwater arc. And so how do we say his name? I swear to God, I have been trying to remember these pronunciations and I cannot do it. Shi Qingxin, the Windmaster. He is being haunted by the Reverend of Empty Words, and he tries to enlist Xi Lian's help. And obviously a lot of bad stuff happens. We figure out that the Windmaster essentially faked his way into heaven, which is not good, but it wasn't his choice. His brother did it for him. And so there's another guy who did not get into heaven because the Windmaster took his place. And he is upset, understandably. And he is now one of the supreme ghost kings. And his name starts with an H. Hushan, the Blackwater demon. Crazy. I just figured out Beef Leaf, in case you were wondering. Anyway, he causes problems. And he is kind of friends with Hua Cheng, but not really. But the reason why Volume 4 I think is so fun is because we do get to see Hua Cheng and Xi Lian start to have feelings for each other. Hua Cheng has been there. I understand this. I just love that this is like such a slow burn romance. But at the same time, like both of them were in it from the beginning. You know, like Hua Cheng obviously has been there since day one. #1 Xi Lian stan. he's been there for 800 years. He's not leaving anytime soon. But like even Shilian, like he only just now acknowledged his feelings, like partway through volume 4 after a lot of kissing. But like when he met Hua Cheng for like the first time in volume 1, like he was definitely interested. He didn't know anything, but he was like, ooh, like butterflies. Like who's this guy, you know? And I respect the fact that he took so long because he was like, no, this is just my friend San Long. Like we're just friends. And Hua Cheng is like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm thinking about the scene in volume 4 where they're out in the fields and all the villagers are like, San Long, please marry my daughter. And San Long is like, I'm married. And Shilian has this whole internal breakdown that he's like, oh my God, he's married. What the fuck? Hua Cheng goes on that whole rant where he's like, yeah, like my beloved is like noble and gracious and beautiful, and I've had a crush on them forever, and I've loved them since we were children, and they are so great. And Shilian immediately gets jealous and immediately is heartbroken. And I just thought that whole scene was so well done because it's like, you don't understand, you're the wife, you're his wife. And then they go on that whole thing with the coffin, and even the scene where they're playing dice, and so they're asking each other questions, and they ask Hua Cheng what his biggest, I think it's his biggest fear, but what are you afraid of? And he's like, not being able to help my beloved. Like, I am praying and hoping that soon we get some information on Hua Cheng, because obviously, like, we know that he is the kid. He's the kid that got saved all those years ago, 800 years ago. But like, we have no idea like how he managed to become the Ghost King. Like we do. We know that he fought on Mount Tonglu. Haven't looked up the word in a while. I think it's Tonglu. We know that he fought all those ghosts to get his power, but also like 800 years is a long time. We kind of know what Shilian has been doing, but we have no idea what Hua Cheng has been doing. And so I really would like more information about my crazy man. I love him so much, especially because he has that two delightful tropes I want to talk about. Number 1, he is big bad ghost king, and he has a bunch of ghost cronies. And you would think that all the cronies are like, we hate that he has a consort kind of person, a new friend, whatever. But literally all the ghosties are just like, our Lord loves you, so we love you. We want you to be happy too. And so they try and like help out Shilian. And it is the cutest thing ever because they're all just like these evil, silly little ghosts, and they're all idiots, but they're also just like, oh, we love you just as much as our Lord and Savior Hua Cheng does. Like the scene in the gambling house, on screen it was crazy, in the book it was crazy, the whole thing absolutely bonkers insane. So the second trope that Hua Cheng has that I think is just so great is personified weapon. Eming. I think it's Eming. Both of them have spiritual devices that are like little guys, you know? So I don't know how to pronounce Shilian's. I want to say it's Royu. Every time I see the word, I say Royu, and I have not ever looked to see Ruye. I've never looked it up to see what it should be. However, it's his like sentient strip of white silk, and it is just so sweet, and it is so cute. And the counterpart is Hua Cheng's sword, his scimitar, called Eming. And I don't know if you've read the character guide. I was reading the character guide the other night because I was curious, and there's the part about Eming is like, blah, 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 like it's a single blood red eye, and it's cursed, and it drinks the blood of its enemies. It's the bane of the heavens. Everybody in heaven was like, don't touch that fucking sword, it's evil. And Shilian is like, okay. But the second part of the description says, it enjoys nothing more than receiving praise and hugs from Shilian, and its childish, forward personality is a great embarrassment to its ghostly master. And it reminds me a lot, actually, of Pookie Bear. Obviously, Pookie Bear and Eming are not the same. Pookie Bear is from Angel Fall, but like sentient swords, literally the best thing ever invented. They're so fun. But I just love the idea that it's like, it's his little pet that he thinks is so embarrassing because every time Shilian is around, he like vibrates and he really wants Shilian to pet him. The scene where Hua Cheng loses his mind in volume 4 when they're learning calligraphy and the mountain opens and he like has that whole breakdown where the two of them end up kissing for hours and hours. And towards the end of the makeout session, Shi Lian notices that Yiming is like also losing his mind, and so he's like, calm down, I will just pet you, it's okay. And then Hua Cheng wakes up and he's like, what happened? And he's like, I'm just petting your sword, don't worry about it. Like, not only is it, there's just like so many implications there, so many innuendos there. I haven't gotten information on the sword yet. Obviously I don't know how the sword was made, I haven't read about it, but I did read a post that I think said that the sword is supposed to be like a physical embodiment of Hua Cheng's self-loathing. And I think he took out his own eye, question mark. I haven't read that far, but, and my favorite part is like, I think it's volume 2 when we first meet the cursed sword. The emperor has specifically told Shi Lian, do not touch the sword. It is evil. It will hurt you. And Shi Lian is like, okay. And he gets to Paradise Manor and they're talking and he's like, oh my God, is that your sword? And Hua Cheng is like, don't worry about it. Just like, don't even look at it. Don't even think about it. And Shi Lian is like, oh my God, does it want me to pet it? I'll pet it right here, right now. And he immediately is like, I'm going to touch the sword. And he does. And nothing bad happens. And I think it's so funny how many of the heavenly officials are like, don't even get close to the sword, to Hua Cheng, to anything. The butterflies, do not touch them. They're evil. They'll hurt you. And the whole time Shi Lian is like, but they're so beautiful and cute. And it's like, yes, you're correct. The thing I keep thinking about is like, if I was either of them, I would be losing my mind, you know, because it's like, Hua Cheng has insane amounts of riz. And so every time he does something for Shi Lian, I'm like, if I was Shi Lian, I would pass out right now. You know, like if my man killed a bunch of people and was holding me to make sure that I didn't touch the ground because it's dirty, I would pass out. But at the same time, Hua Cheng has such a weakness for Shi Lian that it's like, Shi Lian does anything, like look at him, like hold his hand, you know, like talk to him at all. He immediately just like blinks at him and it's like, what the fuck? The scene in volume 4 where I think it's after Shi Lian like tries to revive him by doing mouth to mouth. And obviously Shi Lian runs off into the forest and is like, I'm so sorry. Let's pretend this didn't happen. But then they have to like sit by the fire and like eat food or whatever. And like Hua Cheng passes it off being super suave. But I just know internally that that man was like, what the fuck? You know, it's one of my favorite tropes when one of the love interests is like, I will give you the whole world. And then the other love interest is like, okay, I will also give you the world. And the first love interest is like, what do you mean? Why are you doing that to me? There's just so many good scenes from the two of them. And I think they have such a compelling relationship because they were friends for, I don't know. I'm not usually somebody who's like a friends to lovers kind of person. I love enemies to lovers. I think that's my favorite romance trope because it's just so good. When it's good, you know? But I think this is a perfect exploration of like friends to lovers and slow burn. And like one could argue that like it's kind of an insane relationship because when they first meet, there's like, I think there's like a 7 to 10 year age gap. And Shi Lian saves Hua Cheng. And so Hua Cheng is like this child and he sees him as a child because Shi Lian is a teenager. And so like objectively you're like, yeah, like they're not, there's no way they're going to be lovers, you know? But then we have 800 years and they're kind of, you know, like 7 years is kind of irrelevant. And they've changed so much, etc. And so it kind of like evens out in the end. And also like a 7-year age gap for adults is actually not that crazy. But on top of that, we have Hua Cheng who's been pining after him for centuries. And I still, again, don't really know what he was doing all that time. So I'm assuming he was like looking for Shi Lian or trying to get in touch with him, but like maybe he was just like pining for 800 years. And also, let's talk about that one scene. I think it's in volume 2 when Shi Lian is with the soldier and they stumble upon those crazy sexual flower women. And so he ends up getting poisoned and he secludes himself in this cave while he is getting incredibly horny. And he is doing his best to handle it, but he really doesn't know how to handle it because he's spent his whole life abstaining from sex. And so he really doesn't have context for anything. That whole scene was bonkers because number one, Shi Lian is, you know, like essentially horny as fuck in this cave, trying to control himself. And he is with this like 14-year-old kid who he doesn't realize is the kid that he saved, you know, like 7 years ago or whatever. And also that guy is going to become his husband down the line. The part of that scene when Hua Cheng, Hung, the soldier, is like battling those women and the women are like, okay, like you're not interested in women's bodies, like how can we tempt you? And they're like, what about this? And obviously in the narration, like we don't get any confirmation about what he saw because Shi Lian isn't gonna know. But like we, the audience, are well aware that all of them just like turned into Xilian. And so this poor 14-year-old Hua Cheng is just like having a mental breakdown, like, shit, I am in love with Xilian. But like, like if you said that about any any other ship, you know, it's like, that's crazy. That, like, all of that setup is objectively crazy. But for whatever reason, it just really works for them. And I think the other thing that's so great is that, like, both of them respects the other so much. And so, like, they're both terrified of hurting the other's feelings. And so Xilian will say something and be like, hey, can you like tell me about this? And he's like, actually, never mind. Like, don't even say anything. Like, I understand. It's complicated. You don't have to tell me. It's fine. And Hua Cheng is always trying to protect Xilian because Xilian has no survival instincts whatsoever. He just will sacrifice himself at any given moment. And the two of them together, power couple, insane power couple. I just think they are the best thing ever, and I love them so much. I think the thing that I like so much about this series is that, like, it is fantasy. It is like kind of long. Like each book is over 400 pages, but it reads really quickly. And on top of that, like, part of my problem with fantasy series and longer series in general, and romance period, is that you end up spending a lot of time like wishing that the love interests were in the same scene. And so you would like watch the love interest, you know, go off and do their thing, and you'd be like, oh, we're not gonna see them together for so long. But in this series, like they just always end up together, you know. Like I was reading volume 4 last night, and part of what happens in volume 4 is that Long Shin, he is revealed to be Hua Cheng at a certain point. And so you spend all this time with Long Shin, and then eventually it's revealed that the whole time it was Sanlang. And Xilian had figured it out, and I had not until it was revealed. And I was like, oh my God, like there is extra Hua Cheng content because I didn't know it was him the whole time. But it's the kind of thing where he just like pops up at the most random moment that you're like doing whatever, and it's like, oh my God, Hua Cheng is here, thank God. Or Xilian will be like, ah man, like I can't travel anywhere because I don't have any spiritual power. And then like the fucking skeleton thing will show up and be like, we could give you a ride. Hua Cheng has been thinking about you. And it's just so great. It's so great because Hua Cheng just shows up always. He's always keeping an eye out on his beloved. I almost forgot about the biggest dick in the world, Qirong. I hate him so much. Here's the thing. Qirong is kind of the funniest character in this whole series because objectively he's a piece of shit. Like every time he's on screen or on page, I'm like, fuck that guy, hate that guy, he is evil. But he's so compelling as a character and as a villain because objectively he's really just like an annoying cousin. Like that is all he is. He is kind of powerful in his own way, but like really he's just annoying, and that's his superpower, and he is so good at it. I think it's also funny how his character developed over the course of 800 years, because obviously when we meet him for the first time in his young life, he is just this annoying ass kid who is following around his cousin, and he is trying to like get attention from his cousin because he loves his cousin. But he goes about it in the exact wrong way possible, that he like is mean to everybody in order to like get them to like his cousin. But like they already like his cousin because he's the crown prince. Over the course of 800 years, eventually Qirong gets more evil because he is an evil bitch. And then he becomes this ghost king, and Hua Cheng hates him, and Xilian hates him, and all of Xilian's friends hate him. And he's just the worst. At the end of volume 4, he has escaped, and so he is off somewhere with the child of the body he's possessing, and who knows what that guy's up to. He's fucking crazy. But I gotta say, I was so impressed in the Donghua because the characterization that they made for him is really unhinged. He is the prettiest girl. Every time I saw him on screen, I was like, that is a lesbian. That is a lesbian vampire, because they gave him really big front teeth. God, he's beautiful. I do think it's funny though, because when he first comes on screen in the Donghua, he's like walking into his lair and talking to all of his cronies, and immediately he just like, I can't remember. I know he drops like twat, and I think he says the F word at some point. Fuck. the F word as fuck. He like drops a bunch of like actual legitimate curse words that are like kind of bleeped out, and it made me chuckle. He's so funny. I just love that at any given moment he is like yelling in all caps, and he's like, what the fuck, cousin? Why are you friends with Hua Cheng? I hate that fucker. And it's so funny. Like, I hate him, but he is entertaining as hell. And I think that is just like one of the best things that a villain can be, because he's really not a threat. He's just annoying, and I think that makes everything so much funnier. Oh my god. Anyway, I could talk to you literally for hours about this series. So if you've read it or you want to talk about the Donghua, like, please literally reach out. We can email about it. I don't care. I will be continuing this series. Maybe I'll make a video towards the end when I finish it and I have more thoughts. I cannot be normal about this, as it turns out. I've just been looking up fan art on Tumblr like a loser. That's where we're at mentally. And I am so... I just have to say, I really think that my therapist legally is required to give me free therapy, like at least 2 sessions, I'd say, because all of these mental problems are their fault. So Mallory, if you're watching this, please, I need free therapy, at least for 2 sessions. You did this to me. This is all your fault. Anyway, I'm going to go think about Hua Cheng. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye!